What up folks, it's Alex here, and right in front of me here I've got the Blackmagic design Davinci Resolve Editor Keyboard. And in this video I'm going to give you a quick overview of the keyboard. We're going to talk about the keys, the construction and the layout. I'm then going to open up Davinci Resolve and give you a quick demonstration to show you how it works, and at the end I'll summarise my initial impressions. Now if you enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you're new around here and you do enjoy it, maybe hit that subscribe button, and if you've got any comments or feedback, pop them down below. Right, with that out of the way, let's roll the intro. Right, that's the introduction out of the way. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty and actually talk about this keyboard. Now the first thing I'm going to mention, because everyone always asks as soon as you bring it up, the price. This thing isn't cheap. It's actually really quite expensive. It goes for about £900 or $1,000 US. Now whether it's actually worth that much really is entirely up to you, but hopefully this video will shed some light so you guys can make an informed decision. Right, with that out of the way, let's talk about the keyboard itself, and then we'll jump into Davinci Resolve and I'll show you how it all works. Now it is incredibly well made. It's a full metal construction, which does give it a bit of heft. It's quite heavy, but it feels reassuringly sturdy. It is quite large, as you can see. It takes up the majority of my desk, and compared to a full-size UK keyboard, you can see it is considerably larger. Now the wrist rest itself, that is metal, but it is coated in sort of a matte, soft touch finish, so it's not cold or uncomfortable on your wrists. Now let's talk about the keys themselves. It's a full mechanical keyboard. I think they're cherry switches. There's a quote on the Davinci Resolve website which does state that they are the same switches as used in most gaming keyboards, and they are cherry switches. So that I believe they're cherry, but I can't say for definite. What I can say though is that they feel reassuring. There's lots of feedback and they're actually really nice to use and to type on. The downside, they're non-illuminated. There's no illumination on this keyboard whatsoever. Now talking of the keys, let's have a look at how they're all arranged. So on the left hand side you've got this additional column of keys here. Now these are all shortcuts, and you use these in combination with the jog wheel to actually create your projects. So we'll start at the very top left. You've got these two rows of grey keys. We've got Smart Insert, Append, Ripple Overwrite, Close Up, Place on Top and Source Overwrite. Now these keys generally are for inserting source media onto your timeline. Underneath that we've got these two white or cream keys here that are marked in and out, and these are simply your in and out markers. Under that we've got two rows of black keys: trim in, trim out, roll, slip source, slip destination and transition duration. Now these are for actually making amendments to your timeline. And lastly we've got cut, dissolve and smooth cut, and these are for adding and amending transitions. Moving to the centre of the keyboard, we've got a relatively standard QWERTY keyboard here. So we've got all of our standard QWERTY layout in the middle, but as you can see, all of the keys are colour coded and their actual shortcuts are marked on them nice and clear. Above that we've got our number keys, and above that still we've got our standard function keys, but again you can see they're marked with all of their shortcuts. You will notice that the arrow keys are here, which is much closer towards the standard key set than usual. That also means that this shift and return keys are much smaller than you may be used to, while the tab, caps lock and shift keys on the left are much larger than they usually are. You've got a function key down here in the bottom left, an undo key up here in the top left, and then your delete and ripple delete keys are over here in the right hand side, and they're nicely marked. Moving to the right we've got our number pad. Now we've got 1 to 9 as standard with plus, minus and enter. The thing you may notice is you've got two zeros here, so rather than just having to add a 0 twice, you can add a double 0 with a single click. Really useful if you're entering any time codes. There's also a couple of additional shortcuts up here, and then some more at the top: time code, camera, date and time and clip name. And then on the very far right we've got the jog wheel. Now this is one of the key functions of the keyboard, and it makes the keyboard really worthwhile. Above that we've got shuttle, jog and scroll. Now these change the functions, or how the jog wheel actually works and functions within Davinci Resolve, which we're going to cover in a moment. And then lastly, we've got the source and the timeline keys to enable you to quickly jump between source media and the timeline itself. It's worth pointing out that it is designed for Mac rather than Windows. There's no Windows key, there's only a command key, and also it's an American layout. There isn't a left-hand version, so you lefties, you're a bit stuck, unfortunately, because you can only get this in right-hand drive. Now, the keyboard connects to your PC via a Type-C connection. My PC doesn't actually have a Type-C connection on it, but I use a Type-A USB to Type-C on the keyboard, and that works absolutely fine. There are also two additional USB 3 ports on the back, so you can connect up an additional keyboard, camera, card reader, or whatever it is that you want to connect. There are 2 feet on the back so you can increase the angle of the keyboard as sort of you'd expect. Now there's also a lip around the outside of the entire keyboard so that this thing can be recessed into your desk if you want to do that. Now the jog wheel feels incredibly well made. It's really tactile, has a real nice weight to it, and there's a rubber coating around the outside so that your fingers don't slip on it at all. So overall construction is very, very nice. It's easily the best and nicest keyboard I've ever seen or used. Right, now let me show you how this thing actually works within Davinci Resolve. Now I'm not going to cover every single shortcut, I'm just going to give you a general overview of how this thing functions. And we're going to stick to the cut page, because while it does work essentially the same way within the edit page, there are some shortcuts and some keys which are exclusive to the cut page, so we'll stay in there for this demonstration. Well, I've opened Davinci Resolve, I'm on the cut page, and as you can see I've added some media into my media pool, but my actual timeline is completely blank. So we're going to use the keyboard to start building up our project. So the first thing we want to do is come over to the right hand side and we're just going to hit the source key. And the source key will open up our source tape here in the preview window. And then we can really start to use the keyboard to build up our timeline. So we're just going to use the jog wheel, going to rotate it, and as you can see, as I rotate the jog wheel, it just skims through our source media. Now at the moment I'm in jog, which means that this is consistent. If I go slowly, it will just move the playhead across the timeline nice and slowly, and the faster I rotate it, the faster it will skim through. Now if I change that to scroll, it's very similar to jog. If I rotate it slowly, it just skims through, but this one is actually geared. So the faster I move it, it will skim through even faster. So you can still make tiny adjustments, but it's much quicker to scroll through large sections of the timeline. And then lastly, we've got shuttle here, so I'm going to give that a click. And what that'll actually do is put a center lock in it, which hopefully you can hear. And then as I rotate to the left slightly, it will begin playing backwards through this source tape. And if I just rotate that a little bit more, it'll go a little bit quicker, right until the end where there's a dead stop actually on the jog wheel. Conversely, if we go the other way, just move it slightly to the right, it'll start playing through, and then again, the further I move it, the faster it'll go through until we hit that hard stop. I generally use either jog or scroll. So let's go back to the beginning of the timeline. We're going to select jog, and we're just going to start selecting some points from this source tape to add onto our timeline. And we're going to do that using the jog wheel with our right hand and the in and out keys with our left. So let's just select a point here, let's say right there. We're going to mark an in and an out point, and then we're going to use these keys at the top to actually add it to the timeline. So I'm just going to hit append, and it will just add that point onto my timeline. I can then jog through, select the next clip that I want, in there, out there, and just add that. And we can start to build up our timeline. Now let's say that I need to make an amendment. I actually want to insert a clip somewhere else. All I'm going to do is hit on the timeline key, and that will hop us out of the source tape and take us into the general timeline editing mode. So I want to add a clip here in between these two clips. So I'm just going to get my playhead close to the point until that white marker appears. We're going to hop back into our source tape. We're going to select our clip. Let's just grab this one here and do an in and an out. Now if I was to hit append, it would just add it to the end of the current timeline. I actually want to click smart insert, which will use that marker, and it will just insert that clip in the middle like so. We can then just hop back to our timeline, and we can see that clip is exactly where I want it to be. So now we've built up this rough cut, we generally have everything in the place that we want it to be. So now we can start making some further amendments. And that's when we start to use these 2 rows of black keys here. Now again, you use that smart indicator to choose the point that you want to edit, and then we just hold the corresponding key and then make any amendments using the jog wheel. So let's say I want to make some amendments to this point here. So I can just hold the trim in key and it will select that point there, and I use the jog wheel to just trim that in or trim that out as needs be. If I was to grab the trim out, it will select the same point, but we're actually working on the first clip. We can just drag that out and drag that back in as needs be. If you want to actually roll that cut or that edit point, we just hold roll so that they're both selected, and we can just roll that point across the timeline. To slip, you do pretty much the same thing. So make sure that you're above the point that you need to be, and we just want to slip this clip here. So we're just going to hold the slip source key. You can see that clip has been highlighted on the timeline, and then we can just rotate left and rotate right to slip that as needs be. If we click on slip destination, it will select this one here, and then we can do the exact same thing just by rolling that in and out. So it's as easy as that. You can then use these keys with the jog wheel to make those fine changes to your timeline. Once you're happy, once you've gone through and you've made all those amendments, you can start to add some transitions. So again, let's make sure our little marker is over the one we want, and then we're going to add a dissolve. So I'm just going to click dissolve, and it's just going to add a standard cross dissolve transition here. We've also got a smooth cut here, so let's just scroll over to this one here and hit smooth cut, and it will just add a smooth cut transition like so. If I want to remove that transition, I can just hit cut and it will get rid of it. And then to add a transition that's not any of those, we can just hold the F4 key to bring up this menu here. We can scroll through, grab any of the transitions we want. Let's just go with band wipe for now. Release that key and it will just add that band wipe there. We can hold the trans duration to shorten it or lengthen it, or we can hit cut to get rid of it. And that's really all there is to it. Now that might seem quite simplistic, but I don't want to undersell the time benefit to using this keyboard. You really can save a hell of a lot of time when you're actually just constructing that initial cut of your timeline. When you're actually done with that and you start trying to hop into the edit tab, adding some finesse, maybe adding some titles, some color grading, some fusion, whatever it may be, that's when it starts to become a slightly more conventional keyboard. The real benefit is just in that initial cutting phase. So if you do an awful lot of cutting, you're always cutting the projects together and you spend a lot of time doing that, then there is a hell of a lot to be gained from using this keyboard. Now, would I buy it? No, personally, I don't think I would. Purely for the fact that I don't spend enough time cutting projects together. I only really do a video once or twice a week, so I don't think I'd really reap the benefits. If you do this professionally, or you're just a really enthusiastic amateur and you're spending a couple of hours every single day cutting projects together, then there is a lot to be gained from this keyboard. Whether it actually offers enough value for the cost is entirely up to you. And that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I've given you enough information so that you can make your own opinion up on this Davinci Resolve Editor Keyboard. Do let me know down in the comments what you think of it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.